They are literally right now changing our Bibles. And by changing, I mean they're taking out entire verses.
All right, let's see it.
I would always hear people say, like, only read KJV because that's the only trusted Bible. And normally it would be, like, certain denominations that only trusted that. And they never said why.
It's because they have strong feelings but don't know anything about Bible translation.
So I never really, like, believed that at all.
Más bien.
But I heard Johnny Chang say the verses, and I'll put them up here.
So you're short by a factor of 4. You put 4 verses on the screen. There are actually about 16 verses that are normally omitted from modern translations of the New Testament. And there's a very good reason those verses are omitted. It's because we know they were not original to those texts of the New Testament, that they were things that were added in later by scribes. And overwhelmingly, it's because we have very early manuscripts where those verses do not appear. And we don't have any reason to think that they fell out of the early manuscripts but were then added back in later manuscripts. It makes far more sense that they were not there to begin with, but then were secondarily added in by later scribes. So if you have a Bible translation that omits these verses, that is a more accurate Bible translation.
The verses that were taken out. So what did I do? I'm like, there's absolutely no way that's happening. So I go to my ESV, and I also have a King James version that's from 1958. And so I thought that would be pretty accurate. So I compared the two. Sure enough, these verses are completely skipped over. Like if it was verse 17, it would take out 16, go straight to 18. That is wild, and that is so dangerous.
So there's actually zero danger whatsoever associated with providing you with a more accurate version of the New Testament. Now, the versification is maintained so that if we know verse 21 was not written by the author of the Gospel of Matthew, that chapter will go 18, 19, 20, 22, 23, 24. And in the footnotes, they will say, ancient authorities do not have this verse that reads this way. So you will still have the verse in the footnotes. And the versification is maintained because it's traditional versification. That's not ancient, by the way. Verses were not added to the New Testament until 1551 in the edition of the Textus Receptus, a version of the Greek New Testament that was edited by a man who goes by Stephanus. And so the versification is pretty modern, but in order to not have new translations just be wildly off on the verses, when they take a verse out, they just omit that verse entirely. And again, absolutely zero danger involved in this.
Not only are these just random verses, like these are essential verses.
No, they're not.
These are verses of one man claiming Jesus Christ as God.
No, Acts 8:37 has the eunuch say that he believes Jesus is the Son of God.
And another one in Matthew when Jesus says these will only go out by fasting and by prayer. That verse completely taken out. Another one when they're getting healing from the fountain and they're touching it. The verse that says the angels disrupted the water so that people could get healing, that verse completely taken out. There's another one I can't remember right now, but I'll put it up. And I'll also put the pictures of King James and ESV. And this also is in the NIV. It's in the New King James Version. Like, all of them have been changed.
Yes, these are more accurate editions of the New Testament because since the King James Version was published, we have discovered literally thousands of Greek New Testament manuscripts as well as translations that allow us to reconstruct a much more accurate and reliable version of what the New Testament would have looked like. So again, the verses that were taken out were verses that were added in secondarily by somebody else, not the authors of those texts. Again, it's a more accurate version of the New Testament.
And I've always stood by the fact that the Bible has never been changed. And I'm just finding out that actually, yeah.
You have not even begun to scratch the surface of what remains for you to find out about the Bible and where it came from.
But when we go to the original scribes, we can see that the King James Version is the most accurate.
No, it's not.
It's 99% accurate.
This is entirely false. The 99.5% statistic actually is a rough approximation and eyeballing of how similar the Textus Receptus, or the Greek source text of the New Testament that was used by the King James translators, is to the modern critical editions of the Greek New Testament. When you compare those two editions of the Greek New Testament, they are more or less 99.5% identical. That's what that number is comparing, because we can't compare anything to the originals. We don't have the originals. The best we can do is look at the thousands of different manuscripts that we do have and try to cobble together a version of the New Testament that we think is closest to what came from the pens of the original authors. And that is precisely what the critical editions of the New Testament are, and that is precisely why they have taken those verses out, because we can tell when we look at those thousands of manuscripts that there are a number of passages that were added in by later scribes. So we're correcting the manuscripts to get closer to what we think the original authors originally wrote. But we still don't know for sure what exactly they wrote. There is still a black hole between the composition of these texts and our earliest manuscripts. That's why there will always be a little bit of doubt regarding the way we reconstruct the New Testament.
So I don't want to hear all people in the comments that are non-believers say, yeah, we told you the Bible's been changed. No, it's actually very accurate despite what culture has told you.
But all you're doing is just sharing things that your culture has told you without any knowledge of how accurate those things are. There's an awful lot that you're missing here.
But yeah, essential verses have been taken out of the new versions that are coming out. I just got my Bible a year and a half ago. I don't know how the older ones are that got sold, but mine is definitely changed. My sister's is definitely changed. My mom's version is changed, and those verses are taken out. So check your Bibles, and before you write me off and say that's not happening, go look. They're not just simplifying it. They're taking it completely out.
They're removing passages that were added secondarily by later scribes, and they're giving you a more accurate version of the New Testament. And the fit for this video has been Wolverine in his correct uniform.